The title of my speech is Decriminalizing the Drugs Work. And I'm going to go through some interesting stats on that figure, on why decriminalizing drugs work and why we should do it for America. So currently, how would you like it if I come up with a solution where we can save $40 billion for America? It would be a great solution, obviously, right? So let me go over some of the things why we should do this, why we should recriminalize drugs, and why it's good for America. Currently, we're in trouble, obviously. We're right. If you guys saw in news, Texas actually cut down their educational programs by a significant number, which, so what we're doing is we're cutting out programs from our kids' education, which is the last thing we should be doing. So currently, we have 5% of the world population, 300 million people, which is about 5%, and we have 25% of the prison population of the world. Numbers are completely off. I mean, why do we have so many prisoners? 25% of the world population, while we only have 5% of the population. We're the first world country. Why do we have so many criminals? What has gone wrong? Maybe we need to review our laws, right? So, first thing I'm going to talk about is there's a country in Europe that actually decriminalized drug, not legalized drug, but decriminalized it, and they've done it since 2001. And the results have been fantastic. And I'll go over the figures with you. The country is Portugal. It's a EU member, obviously. And in 2001, they made all the drugs, personal use drugs, decriminalized. So what they did was, basically the numbers, after they studied the numbers, there was, 5 years later, when they studied the numbers, number of deaths from the street drug overdose dropped from 400 to 290. So there's significant 26% drop already just by decriminalizing drugs. The number of HIV cases dropped from using dirty needles from 1,400 in 2000 to 400 in 2006. 71% drop. There's already a huge drop that's already affecting by not treating it as a criminal problem. So why are people fearful of decriminalizing drugs? People think that because if you make the drugs decriminalized, you get this drug tourism. People will come over, they'll come in, do drugs, and leave. That is actually not correct at all. Portugal did not see any of that happening. They did not see other Europeans coming in. I mean, think about that. Logic says that somebody wants to do drugs, they will find a local dealer. They will not go out to another country. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you're not going to have people traveling countries doing drugs. People who abuse drugs or use drugs, they use it locally. They're not going to go to another state to do drugs, right? And the cost of the drug is costing us $40 billion. The rest are 1.5 million citizens each year, locking up about 500,000 of them. And the tougher drug laws are actually one of the reasons why 1 in 5 black African American or black man spends time behind bar. They're simple things like marijuana, for example. 50% of the prison population is in prison because of marijuana. Mind-blowing. Marijuana, a plant that was legal, free, we were growing it, making money off of it, 70, 80 years ago, back in 1920s. It's mind-blowing. For example, same thing with the drug laws in Mexico. There are about 800 policemen and soldiers are killed since between January 2007 and March 2009. So close to 1,000 policemen dying, about 6,000 citizens dying of the drug war cartel fighting. Let's look at some other countries. In Argentina, in 2009, the Argentinian Supreme Court declared that it's unconstitutional to prosecute a citizen for having drugs for their personal use. Adults should be free to make life decisions without intervention of the state. It's a free country. Why are state telling us what we can put in our body? You shouldn't. If you have a good job, you can do whatever you want, as long as you're performing your job to your max and you're not causing any financial or physical or other issues to your company. Who can tell you what you should be putting in your body? Nobody can. That's a freedom of right. Canada is the same way. The numbers pretty much has been going up where people are in more favor of, especially marijuana, more favor of legalizing it and actually taxing it instead of there's this whole this criminal enterprise to it, which is incorrect. We should be actually taxing it and selling it like they're doing in California or Colorado. In Canada, for example, in 2001, Globe and Mail reported that poll found that 47% of the Canadians agreed with the statement, the use of marijuana should be legalized in 2001 compared to 26% in 1975. So there's generation. Same thing actually is happening in America too. There was a poll taken about 20 years back where not majority, but only 30% of the people are saying it should be legal. Now it's actually over 50%. It's 53 to 55% of Americans are realizing, let's use a common sense. You may know people who've done drugs. There's 70 to 80% of the people in America actually have tried marijuana at least once in their lifetime. They're not maybe an actual user, but they tried it once, so they know. You may have a friend who does it occasionally. And do you want a person drinking and driving or smoking and driving or something like that? And the answer is kind of clear. More you drink, you're going to be very reckless. And the way the marijuana actually works is the more you take, the less you take, more high you get. So if you don't smoke for 2 months and you smoke, you get more higher versus if you smoke every day. So your body is actually, it is not exactly opposite of alcohol actually. Your body gets immune to, if you take more marijuana, it actually processes it and it flushes it out. Not flushes it out, but it actually doesn't give you the same high as if you do it more frequently. So it's exactly opposite of alcohol. Let's look at some other countries. Czech Republic adopted a new law that took effect in January 1, 2010 that allows a person to propose up to 15 grams of marijuana or 1.5 grams of heroin without facing criminal charges. In Mexico, in April 2009, Mexican Congress approved a change in general health law that decriminalized the possession of illegal drugs for immediate consumption and personal use, allowing a person to propose 5 grams of marijuana and 500 milligrams of cocaine. Only restriction is that people in possession of drugs should not be within 300 radius of school, police department, and correctional facilities like jail. Even drugs like LSD, opium, heroin were also decriminalized in Mexico. So, which is a good thing, which is cut down on silly things like you're not prosecuting people for using a personal use drug, which is not going to have a long-term effect. If they're using it in their house and doing the job professionally, a lot of these drugs is actually, if you overdo them, then you get a negative effect. If you, like even heroin, they say, you think heroin would be extremely bad. It's actually not. If you do it in a proper, systematic amount, it's actually, you can live a proper life. You don't get addicted to it. But the reason these abuse happens is because mainly of the mental issues. So instead of treating it as a criminal issue, we need to be treating it as a health issue. That's the main goal of decriminalizing drugs. And what Argentina has done that. So another country is Netherlands. Everybody heard of it? Marijuana Mecca, I guess. But they have a very common sense policy. It says drug use is a public health issue and not a criminal matter. That's how they look at drug. Another thing is a distinction between hard drugs and soft drugs. So there's a big difference between heroin and doing marijuana. But as far as law is concerned, it's actually same thing. Same Schedule 1 drug, just put them in jail, just prosecute them to the max kind of things. Norway, in June 2010, Minister of Justice and Police announced that ministry is working on a new policy involving decriminalization using the Portugal model. So America needs to be doing something similar to that, because that's what's going to save taxes on prosecuting people who don't need to be prosecuted and put in jail. It costs 50 grand per one person to maintain them in jail. Feed them, clothe them, keep them warm. It's just 40 grand of the tax is going for one person, keeping them in jail. That's huge. That's how the 40 billion builds up to, because you're prosecuting these people who shouldn't be in jail. Instead of treating them as a health issue, they're treating them as a criminal issue. So one thing I want to show you is legalization. Number of stats since 1980, we had these war on drug. Nixon that put in war on drug, and I want to show you a graph on our population. So here's our graph. Back in 1980, we had a population of 225, and in 2005, we have about 300 million people. So that's a jump in 23%. So in roughly 25 years, we had jump about 23% in population. Good number, a decent number. Now, since the war on drug got declared back in 1980s, here's you have people who are in jail. It just skyrocketed from less than 500,000 to 2.5 million people. This is 2006 stats. Big jump. All the extra money coming from people's taxes. Here are the current numbers from 2006, how many people are actually in probation, jail, and parole. So about close to 4.5 million people are actually either in jail or in probation or in some kind of a system of where they are in actually correctional system. So what I did was I mapped these two numbers out. So here's our jump in population, 23%, and here's, if you map it, it just skyrockets. It was 78%. So instead of having 23% of people, population in the prison growth, we actually have 78%. So because of these drug laws is what's causing this whole huge jump in prison population, because we have these drug laws declared on stuff that we shouldn't be putting people in prison for. We should be treated as more of a health issue. So what I did was I actually went out and did some research, and I found out what drugs and what they're so the 4 different ways the drugs are classified: the means, the pleasure, the physical dependence, and psychological dependence. So if you broke them down, and I'm going to show you something. So these drugs on this side are the most hardcore as considered. So heroin is the hardest drug you can possibly do. Everybody kind of knows that. Heroin, the last drug you want to do. Second hardest drug, cocaine. Guess what the third hardest drug you can do? Alcohol. Crazy. Alcohol is, as far as all the stats go, it has very, very high physical dependence. Even pleasure is higher, obviously, and the means of getting it is very easy. And psychological dependence is also very high on that. Then comes tobacco. So now all the drugs listed here, alcohol and tobacco, the 2 legal drugs, are actually comes in top 4. And if you keep going down, then you have THP, and then you got cocaine and ecstasy and LSD. So I'm sorry, not cocaine, cannabis. Marijuana is actually considered the safest drug as far as other dependency goes, psychological other dependency. And then you got ecstasy and then LSD. So safest drug you should be doing is LSD. But it's obviously it's illegal. We're talking about LSD, Steve Jobs actually did LSD, and he came up with the idea of kind of this whole computer idea of Apple, genius ideas of Apple. The person who came up with DNA, sequence of twistings, DNA, I don't know if you guys seen the map of like DNA, you guys seen it like twirly. The guy who came up with that, he did LSD night before. LSD is considered one of those like god drug because it's supposed to wake you up, and people who do LSD, I never done it, but from what I read on this research, LSD people who do actually LSD, they feel this happiness and peace within themselves for the next 6 to 8 months. It's considered god drug if you do research on it. So with that being said, I mean obviously we have the wrong drugs legal, and we need to make those drugs legal as soon as possible. Kidding. So main goal of the whole my speech is we need to actually treat drugs as a health issue versus a criminal issue, because that's what it is. Why are you taking drugs? Why are you not happy the way you are? Because you want to change your alertness of your mind, right? Why are you doing that? Because you're not happy at the moment you are. And so you drugs certain times, alcohol, whatever you do. I mean, so we should be treating this as a health issue versus a criminal issue. So that's my whole goal, and hopefully Congress will listen to that and then decriminalize a lot of drugs that we don't need to be decriminalized. That's all, guys.